Hi, this is Ren.
This is KC.
And this is All Walks of Film and sometimes television. And I have to apologize. I've been extremely busy moving and, trying to wrap up stuff with my work and haven't had a lot of time to make a lot of episodes. But I did have time to watch 13 Reasons Why Season 2. Now, I actually haven't released what I was working on for the first season of 13 Reasons Why, and I thought that I would have more to say once the second season had wrapped up, and, I thought the show was going to be over, but clearly the show wasn't over after this. So, before going into this, I'm going to say that there is going to be absolutely no limit on spoilers. We're going to do as a discussion on this and get into the controversies that this show's brought up, as well as get into some very sensitive subjects. This will probably not be advertiser friendly because we are talking about violence, we're talking about drug use, mental health problems, and we're also talking about sexual assault, which is something that is taboo in this sphere, so just be on the lookout for that one.
So getting into it, we've been working on writing a paper, or not a paper, I guess an essay, and we wanted it really well researched and written out, and it's essentially like the 13 Reasons Why. 13 Reasons Why is super harmful and like the exact opposite of what it's trying to be. So we were working on writing that, and then season 2 was about to come out, so we were going to watch season 2 and then take the new information of what happened to the program into account and rewrite it and put it out that way. And essentially what happened was the finale of season 2 was so traumatizing, I would say. I would say that's pretty traumatic, even if it's not something you personally experienced. But in this day and age, I feel like we've all experienced something like it. So we kind of just needed to actually make an episode just about the finale. But to sort of sum up a lot of the problems with the show, the thesis is that you never really know what's going on in somebody's life, so you should always treat people well and with respect. But the show has done all sorts of really harmful things with the subject matters that they're trying to talk about. I think everyone who's even passably familiar with the show is aware the show is about suicide, mental illness / depression, sexual assault and rape, violence, bullying, drug and alcohol abuse, homelessness. It's supposed to be about a lot of social issues that the young people are facing.
It's basically but it's always an after-school special on crack. Yeah. It's like all of these things combined into one show.
Right. And there's been a lot of controversy surrounding the show in terms of copycats, in terms of it being discovered that the writers and the content creators consulted with a lot of mental health experts and a lot of experts in these subject matters and kind of went against what was advised for them to do with the program.
To a certain point, I say, what were you expecting when Selena Gomez is the person producing this?
I mean, I'm not going to talk badly about her because I don't know to what extent her creative direction has influenced the show or her background in life or anything like that. I'm just not particularly familiar with her. But I know that there are a handful of problems with this program that I do want to talk about even before we talk about this episode. Because what happened in this finale is super important, but there's a buildup of a lot of problems before this that have made this really upsetting. Number one, the biggest problem with the entire program is that they are intentionally profiteering on the emotional and mental distress of children. And by children, I mean legal minors. This is a program that's made explicitly for Netflix. It is made only for the Netflix algorithm. And the producers of this program should be very obviously aware of how watching television on Netflix works. And, there's a little trigger warning before the episodes. But the problem is that it's directly at the beginning of the episode between the Netflix logo and between the intro. And it's kind of put in there with the previously on. And Netflix, if you watch the episodes in a row, if you don't sit down and watch one episode and turn off the program and sit down and watch another episode, it automatically skips that. That's already pretty bad. But then the only help that they offer is linked directly to the 13 Reasons Why website. And we can get all into like the problems with the information even provided on the website, but they do not say, hey, if you have problems, please seek help from somebody. Talk to your parents, talk to a counselor, try to see a therapist, talk to your friends, call a crisis hotline. They don't say any of that. They say, go to our website that they make money off of. That is super fucked up. That is not acceptable. And nobody talks about that.
And honestly, I'm not against them putting their website in the credits and all that kind of stuff, but they need to put a crisis line information before they do that.
But they also, this is a problem with the show in the storyline and outside of the storyline when they try to offer help, quote unquote. There is never a point where people talk to adults or authority figures or the police. That doesn't happen routinely, like over and over and over again. And outside of the storyline, the show never says like, hey, you need to talk about these things. And the defense of this show is always, well, we're trying to start a conversation. And there was a study done at Northwestern that I sat down and I read. I read this Northwestern study that was done in like 4 different areas of the world. And it's supposed to be about like, how did the show facilitate conversations between between children and their parents. But the show does not do anything to help facilitate that conversation. It glamorizes suicide, which is disturbing. It never illustrates the idea of reaching out for help as an option, except for when Hannah goes to the school counselor and she claims that that's what ultimately caused her to kill herself. So the one time that it ever happens on the program, it's deemed in like a bad light. And this carries all the way on into season 2. Yeah. Like, repeatedly, people are not calling the police. They are not talking to their parents. They're not talking to teachers who aren't ever there. But, you know, there's no, like, hey, you need to talk to people if there's something wrong. I mean, Jessica eventually talked to her parents, I think. But that was never really, like, a big highlight moment on the show.
Yeah, and after watching the first season, there was a whole can of worms just with that season that needed to be opened. And there was a lot of retconning with this season, you know, changing the character. And I get that Hannah is an unreliable narrator.
Oh, yeah, because it was never addressed at any point in the program, but she obviously lied about a lot of things. Like, there were a lot of things that she said on the tape that we know for a fact never happened that way. Most specifically, Jessica and Alex and their relationship with Hannah and all that stuff.
Yeah, and her character in and of itself has a lot of issues, and I like the fact that they actually addressed it at some point in the second season, but obviously there's some other stuff that we can talk about.
Right. Going back to the way the program handles, like, the program deals with these issues outside of the storyline. They made it worse the second season because what they do is they have the actors outside of character talking to the camera, and they say, like, hey, we're going to be talking about this issue, you know, going down the list. If you're dealing with any of these, don't watch this program. That is horrible. You are specifically trying to make money off of entertaining people about these very serious, crucial things that so many people are dealing with, and you're telling the people dealing with it that they should not be watching the program. Also, you're not making it for them. You're not trying to help them. They're not included in, like, the ideal viewership. So any of this nonsense of, like, 13 Reasons Why helps people understand and work through their issues is complete garbage.
Yeah, and, you know, that being said, telling kids that they can't do something is, like, counterintuitive. Like, that automatically means that they're going to try to do it. I mean, I was a teenager at one point. I wasn't, like, really bad as a teenager, but, you know, getting told that I can't do something, you know, at least tempts me to do that when I'm a teenager.
Right. It's just, it's super condescending, but it's also really shitty to be like, hey, we're profiteering off the entertainment of, you know, these stories about these people who have these different issues, but the real life people who are looking for answers to their issues, you're not invited.
Yeah, and
this isn't about you. That's fucked up.
And before we get into it, I do want to say that I am strongly against censorship, you know, or self-censorship and all that kind of stuff. I do think that creators should be able to make the show that they want to make. We talked about this in our Game of Thrones episode, like way back. Talking about
when everyone was talking about spoiler, if you haven't seen season 5 of Game of Thrones, don't listen to this next part. But there's an episode where Sansa is raped, and that created a lot of controversy. It wasn't the first time there was a rape on the show, or even a controversial rape, but it was kind of a big thing of fans were like, hey, we're not going to watch the program anymore. We're going to boycott it. How dare you show the rape of this character? Even though it wouldn't have made any sense to not have it, considering it's like she just married Ramsay Bolton and that's what he does, essentially. Yeah. But Sophia Turner, the actress, came forward and she said, okay, first of all, I really appreciated the writing and the storyline because I feel like this was a good avenue to start a conversation. But that's what she believed. She was like, we should use things like fantasy and otherworldly stories to talk about real issues. This was a way to showcase these real problems, and everyone treated me with a lot of respect. I was not taken advantage of in the filming of this thing. I never felt unsafe. Everyone made sure that I was doing okay. So there's not an issue of the actress, this is bad for the actress. There were special precautions taken to make sure that she was doing okay with the material, which I appreciated. But even she was like, no, this was the story that we needed to talk about. This is something that should be addressed more often. Just because it's difficult or uncomfortable doesn't mean that it shouldn't be talked about as long as it's talked about seriously.
Well, yeah, and it's a show about war, and let's face it, rape is a very common thing in war, regardless of whether or not it's talked about a lot in war movies, which, let's face it, it isn't talked about as much as it probably should be in war films. I mean, there are exceptions, but, it is an important issue to discuss. This show definitely bites way more than it can chew.
Definitely. I mean, they've always handled the specific scenes where they're depicting a lot of problems well, for the most part, unless it has to do with substance abuse, and then most of the time they don't know what the flying fuck they're talking about. But in general, when it comes to things like the rape scenes are all very well handled, the suicide scene was very well handled. The only one that was on screen, Alex's suicide, was handled very poorly, mostly in that it wasn't on screen and it wasn't well explained.
Yeah,
it was very confusing what was going on.
I was so confused because all the stuff going on with Tyler.
And Jeff had just died, and a lot of stuff was happening super quickly. Not very well handled. But Jessica's rape scene was handled well. Hannah's rape scene was handled well. And a scene in this finale was also handled well. In that scene alone, the way that it's filmed and depicted and everything, it's very serious, it's very dire. I like that they don't really have the kid gloves. I'm a little confused because I had thought that they specifically said that the second season wasn't going to include graphic imagery, and there was a lot of it. But ultimately, I'm happy that they didn't pussyfoot around it. The problem is how they handle everything outside of those scenes. The very specific one-off scenes. When you deal with the characters and their motivations leading up to these scenes, and then when you deal with the way that things are handled after the fact. And then when you talk about, what kind of message are you sending to kids, your target audience? And I'm not trying to sound condescending when I say kids, but I know where I was when I was a teenager and I was dealing with a lot of these same things, because that happened to me not very long ago. That was very, very recent to me. But I definitely know that if I didn't have other resources that I was aware of and I wasn't educated on a lot of these issues, and my only thing that I thought was a good source of help to look to was this program on Netflix, I can't even imagine how fucked up I would have been.
Yeah.
Because it definitely rewards wallowing.
Yeah.
And it definitely makes reaching out for help seem impossible, which is deeply upsetting.
Yeah, and the biggest problem with season 1 was the fact that it essentially glorified revenge suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is why there were copycats.
Yeah.
Because there were.
This season tried to backtrack on some of that stuff, and there was a short period of time where the show was actually really compelling. It was covering some stuff, and I was like, wait, did this show get good.
Yeah, there were like a good 5 episodes that were actually very well done.
Yeah.
A lot of season 2 was retconning Hannah's character to the point of making a lot of season 1 incomprehensible. There's a lot of contradictory things, and a lot of things suddenly don't make sense, and things that are like very obvious that came out are suddenly treated like they're a mystery. And it does get very confusing. But there is actually a point. One of our things that we were going to talk about with the 13 Reasons Why is harmful, is Hannah Baker is a terrible person. She doesn't have depression. She doesn't have anxiety. She doesn't have, like, mental health issues. Like, her motivation for committing suicide and her motivations for making the tapes are hurtful and evil and cruel and very intentional. And there is a point in this season where Hannah comes back as a ghost, which is kind of bullshit, but it's almost worth it because there's a scene where Clay is like, calls her out for doing that. And it was awesome as a viewer to be like, thank you, show, for recognizing that Hannah Baker was a truly awful, evil human being who shouldn't have been glorified in season 1. We shouldn't be looking at her actions like, oh no, that's so sad. No, it's horrifying. In like a truly evil, you're looking at a villainous person kind of a way. And it was nice to see that a lot of season 2 was like, look at how hurtful Hannah's tapes were. Look at how much devastation she wrought on other people out of pure anger and destructive impulse.
Especially Jessica.
And what makes me really sad is after 2 seasons, Jessica's story is still not really treated like it's Jessica's story. It's still all about fucking Hannah. Jessica never blames Hannah, even though she should.
Yeah,
she really should.
She was there when it happened.
And she did nothing about it.
She did nothing about it.
Very intentionally. And the show tried to retcon, like, oh, well, she tried to tell Jess about it one time. But that honestly made it a lot worse because it's like, oh, so Hannah knew that talking to Jess would have been the right thing to do. And she intentionally did not do so because they were a little mean to her. Fuck that. But then, of course, one of the other big problems with the first season, and then going on into season 2, is one of the ways that it's really, really harmful in writing Hannah Baker to be such a terrible person is that there are always going to be horrible people out there who, when they see someone who's committed suicide, they're going to be like, they're doing it for attention. Or, oh, they were just weak. Or when they hear that someone was raped, they're going to be like, oh, well, they did something to deserve it. They brought it upon themselves. Those things will always happen. And this show was writing Hannah Baker to be that perfect model of, you brought this on yourself and it is all your fault. And that's really harmful and fucked up. That's not acceptable. Like, the fact that you specifically wrote into the first season that almost everything that happened to Hannah was explicitly her fault and could have easily been prevented if she had a modicum of self-awareness and human decency. Like, Jeff dying. She knew to call 911 and she didn't. She could have prevented Jeff's death, but she didn't. Because why? Not really a good reason for why until it was too late. But with her rape scene especially, Hannah was not that drunk at that party. She saw Bryce Walker rape Jessica in front of her. Like, unquestionably, there is no gray zone there. That is exactly what happened, and she saw it very clearly for what it was. She did nothing to help Jessica. She did nothing to take responsibility for what happened. She did nothing to create any sort of, penalization for Bryce. She did not talk to the authorities or her parents or the school. She didn't do anything like that. Instead, what she did was she saw Bryce alone in a hot tub and took all her clothes off and got in there with him, knowing that he was a rapist, not having any personal history with him. He's not her friend. He's not her boyfriend. The only thing she knows about him is that he is a rapist, and she intentionally stripped all of her clothes off and got in there with him on purpose, with no emotional connection. No, like, she was high or she was drunk or she was going to do something about it. No, there is, like, no legitimate logical reason for why her being raped isn't her fault. And that is horribly harmful writing. I don't know why, if you're specifically trying to talk about issues of rape, and especially talk about how rape is bad and how victims need to be believed, and we have a culture of not believing victims, why you would specifically write a victim of rape to have done everything in her power to induce it upon herself to be raped. That is so unfathomably horrifying that people just wrote that and produced it and put it out there, and hundreds of thousands of people consumed that and thought that that was totally fine.
Yeah, and then, like, the second season comes in and they retcon that, oh, she does know Bryce Walker.
But not like, really. They talked to each other twice ever. Like, a year before anything happened. Because Bryce's whole story about them being in a relationship and hooking up and having sex all the time wasn't true.
Right.
Like, they talked one time at a football game, and the one time he brought her to look at a bridge. Yeah. And after that, they had no connection.
I get that part was him lying. But,
right, and they kind of tried to do better with that storyline with Chloe, who is Bryce's new girlfriend, who has been raped by him multiple times and knows for a fact that he's a rapist, but she has all of these emotional involvements, like ties to him, and you see how she sees like a more vulnerable side to him and why she's intimidated by the other people around him into complacency, and they try to make that part work a lot better. And the writing in season 2 is a lot better on the front of dealing with rape victims.
Yeah,
but they still don't fix season 1 in terms of Hannah Baker not helping Jessica, not doing anything about Bryce, and her own rape being her fault. It's very upsetting.
I will say Chloe was kind of a fascinating character to watch, just because, it gets into a much more ambiguous relationship of, like, what's consent and all that kind of stuff. But also, like, getting into the fact that what kinds of people actually stay with these people. Because there have been, there have been rapists there that have had lovers that have stayed with them for years and years. And, that's
how does that happen?
Yeah.
The show kind of gets into that. And especially, like, the show got a lot more into Bryce as a rapist and as kind of a bad person and how he kind of gets away with it, because in season 1 he was just like, I rape because I like to rape. Isn't that what rapists are like? And that's like, that was a big problem. And in this season they're like, hey, he's actually kind of charming and funny, and a lot of the stuff that he does publicly kind of shows that, like, he cares about people and he's willing to look out for them, and that's why he has a lot of friends who are willing to put their butts on the line for him, and why people don't believe the fact that he could be a rapist. The show did do a lot to make that a lot more difficult to contend with. I looked at him, and there were moments in season 2 where I saw Bryce and I was like, man, he's such a fun guy. I want to hang out with him. And then I'd be like, oh, that's the same guy from last season,
But I mean, the truth of the matter is, people who do that kind of stuff are people, and people have a lot more nuances to them than how, especially in season 1, how they're portrayed oftentimes, which is a one-dimensional villain. Most people aren't through in and throughout sociopaths. I mean, a great example, I don't know, bear with me, but a good example is the most famous rapist right now, and that's Harvey Weinstein. Because there is that nuance in his presentation. Obviously, you can watch the videos now and see that he's a complete sociopath and stuff like that. But, he was, like, charming on, like, the television shows and would, like, laugh at jokes and, like, all that kind of stuff. And, like, going back, you can kind of see...
He would always finance very, like, pro-female movies.
Yeah. Even though, the whole thing with the Frida Kahlo movie and all that kind of stuff.
The Uma Thurman movies. Kill Bill.
Those kinds of people aren't able to do what they can do for an extended period of time unless they're likable, to a certain extent.
Well, with him specifically, he had an army around him to protect him and to facilitate what was going on. And that was more of what was going on in this season, was, like, the group element of rape culture. And I'm not saying America is a rape culture. We have, like, one prominent rape culture in America, but there are pockets of rape culture. Like, if you look at the Steubenville Case, which I think the show most closely resembles in season 2, that is an example of a rape culture. It's small, it's one high school, but there was very specifically a whole social hierarchy built around protecting rapists.
Yeah, and I don't want to go off in too much of a tangent, but at my high school, there was a teacher, a drama teacher, that had sexual relations with some of the students. And I remember, I'm not speaking to the fact that I am the greatest person who can see bad in people or whatever, but I remember every time I saw him, like, everybody at the school loved him. And there was something about him. I don't know what it was, but, like, I remember I thought it was weird that he had kind of like a couch bed that was, like, above the stage. And I was just like, what the fuck's that about? And then, like, I remember I was like, oh, cool, so we can go up there. And it was like, no, we can't. And I was like, what is going on? And then, like, 6 years later, he got arrested and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And, it's just one of those things where there's a culture that facilitates that. And I like the fact that the show got into that and actually got into it pretty well and hard. Honestly, I think the show could have gotten more into it if it wasn't, like, focused on some of the stuff that later comes down in that final episode.
Right.
But I did appreciate the fact that they did try to make Bryce a more three-dimensional character
and that they tried to make his serial rapes a little bit more nuanced and gray, because there wasn't any rape scene that he was in this season that was very clearly like, oh, she is unconscious and she cannot give consent, and he's like, I'm gonna fuck you. Oh yeah.
Okay, well,
didn't happen.
Other than the pics of Chloe.
Those are pictures, though.
Right.
In the actual scenes that you see of him with Chloe, the real enacted scenes, those scenes are always in a very gray area. That's getting further from, like, black and white, the legal definition of rape, and more into socially, how do we talk about and communicate about sex and consent?
Which is something that I feel that schools have a very bad time with, because you get into this whole thing of abstinence only, and then you don't talk about,
things
the levels.
Like rape and consent.
Well, yeah, and
how do you have healthy sex?
And that was my problem with the first season, with the rape scene, was the fact that when you only show rape as one thing, anything outside of that, people don't view as rape.
Right.
That's one issue that I have with the Steubenville case. They knew what they were doing was wrong, and I will never say that they didn't know what they were doing was wrong and that it was sexually provocative, but I strongly believe that those kids did not know what they were doing was technically defined as rape.
I don't agree with, we're getting into a completely different thing, actually talking about the details of the Steubenville rape, but, like, it wasn't just 2 or 3 boys with a girl in a basement. It was a party. It was a lot of people. It was a lot of kids at that high school who all saw what was going on, and they took pictures of it, and they tweeted about it, they put it on Facebook, they recorded it. Everybody saw that and preserved it. They had proof of what was going on.
Okay, maybe
cannot tell me that, like, an entire high school, essentially, none of them realized that what was going on was rape. Especially when they're starting to be questioned by cops. They all collectively took down all of that evidence that they had. Police started asking questions about it, and videos came down, tweets came down, everything was fucking deleted. And of course, the one kid, or maybe it wasn't a kid, but I know that there was somebody very specifically who leaked a lot of the information that was, the videos and proof of what was going on, and they were punished for it, legally. And that was fucked up. But the way that this girl found out that what had happened to her was she saw it on her social media when she woke up the next day. Because everybody saw it, and nobody did anything about it. And I do not believe, even in Steubenville, and I've literally seen Steubenville High School, by the way. I know where it is, I know the area around it, and I still do not believe that everyone there thought that that wasn't rape.
Okay.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
The show has a lot to unpack, though.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of, that is something in season 2 I like the Polaroids.
Yeah. Like
the literal proof did remind me a lot of Steubenville and things like that.
Yeah, and the whole clubhouse that they had and stuff like that. Though I kind of feel that they could have pushed that a little bit more.
They're probably saving that for season 3.
Okay.
But yes, I agree. But then what I was trying to get into was the actual filmed scenes of Bryce. The only times he's having sex in the season is with his girlfriend, Chloe, who he did rape one time. You hear the story, you see the photographic evidence, but all the scenes that you actually see are her giving very clear indicators that she does not want to have sex, and him coercing her into giving consent. That's getting into the concept that the only kind of consent is affirmative consent. But what I liked about it was there are two different sexual relationships that are shown on screen, almost entirely until the last episode. There's Bryce's sexual experiences with Chloe, and there's Hannah's sexual relationships with Zach. And what I like is that Hannah and Zach have a very healthy sexual relationship. And it's nice to see, like, an example of, like, what that should look like. Like, they have a very awkward first time having sex, but it's not rape just because it didn't go that well. It was just kind of awkward and weird and not that great. But they communicate openly about it. They kind of work on their sexuality alone and then talk to each other about what they enjoy and what they want more of. They talk to each other about how much do we have sex and do we like having sex and do you want to go again and are things okay? And there's a lot of open communication and it's not something to be ashamed of or to feel bad about. In contrast to what does sexual coercion look like? Because technically what we see on screen is Bryce getting his girlfriend to say yes to sex, which didn't make it acceptable or okay or healthy or not rape even. So I did really appreciate that they were going a lot more into the gray zones of, like, what is this?
Yeah, and, you know, contrary to what I thought this conversation would be, like, there is a lot of nuance, in my opinion, of what the second season becomes, because, like, I do think that it does do a lot of retconning that I think is positive. I do think that it does...
Too much retconning. Quite possibly.
I do think that the second season, for the most part, was better written, and there were certain things that were handled a lot better. Unfortunately, they feel like they are rewriting events in the past.
Right. Like, for example, their depictions of mental illness have gotten a lot better. Mm-hmm. Because in season 1, it was Hannah Baker, who, like I said, she's not depressed. She does not have depression. She does not have anxiety. She does not have mental health issues.
Clinical. Like
in a clinical sense, right. In a mental illness sense. I'm not saying there was nothing wrong with her life or anything like that, or that things weren't difficult for her, but from, like, a perspective of what does depression look like, it was not Hannah Baker.
Well, yeah, then they tried to, like, retcon and say, oh, well, you know, there was, like, a history of, like, mental illness
in the family, and, you know, whatever. Blah, blah, blah. But even she was like, she didn't show any signs because she didn't. And that was for anxiety. So, like, that's still different. But then this season we had Skye and her bipolar disorder. That was a mental health issue that you could very clearly see in her actions. And then she does actually get help, and it does help her in a positive way, and she is able to talk about, like, if you have mental illness, you might need to go get help, but you might need to, like, deal with getting medicated and with figuring out what your medication is over time, and it might be so dire that you're taken out of school and put into a mental health facility, but it can still be a positive thing. She talks very clearly about, like, what her mental illness is and how she copes with it and how it works for her. And what she describes and the way she behaves is very accurate. You know, it's nice to see that. That was one of the only times where getting help was positive and not like a detriment or a non-option.
Yeah, I think the only unfortunate thing about Skye was she wasn't in the season enough. And that whole thing of her being in the mental hospital wasn't elaborated on more. Because especially when you're dealing with, like, clinical depression and all this kind of stuff, and, like, you describe yourself as a show about talking about these issues. Like, if this show was just like, we're just going to be a show, then I wouldn't have had as big an issue of this show is actually trying to give a message. I think they could have fixed that if they had, you know, expanded on it
and didn't forget about a lot of the stuff that was brought up. Like I said, anything having to do with substance abuse was very badly handled. Everything with Justin's character is not realistic or well handled. Jessica's alcoholism is brought up pretty well and then promptly forgotten about. There's a scene where she's really struggling with, like, her emotional trauma and what she's going through, and her parents are drinking in front of her, and it's really difficult for her to deal with the alcohol being in front of her and her not drinking. But then there's a scene where she goes over to Olivia Baker's house and they're drinking wine and it's a non-issue. like it's not even a thought. And it's super fucking weird how they just like brought it up and forgot about it. And that kind of happens a lot in the show. So that was a lot of things besides the main thing we wanted to talk about, but there's so much to unpack with this episode with the show leading into this episode.
I mean, I will say that I did like the fact that the show also had direct confrontations with rapists and, expressed class differences, which more, especially like getting near the end of the season with the fact that Justin gets 6 months, even though
he was an accomplice.
He was an accomplice.
Quote, unquote.
That one is so, like, legally speaking, that one, like, I would need to talk to a lawyer to actually understand what the legal ramifications were, but he was intoxicated, he was scared.
And he was an accomplice, he wasn't the person doing it.
Exactly.
But, I mean, he knew it was happening, it kind of partially happened in front of him, and he didn't go to the authorities.
Exactly.
And he didn't report it. So, like, I understand the charge, but there is a very specific thing in the show where the actual rapist only gets 3 months probation, and the accomplice to rape gets 6 months probation because one of them is rich and one of them is poor. And that's the reason. They try to hide it behind, like, oh, well, we don't know where to put him. But that's bullshit. One of them had a better lawyer than the other because they had more money. But that's realistic. That's what fucking happens. And the law punishes whistleblowers harsher than they punish criminals.
Exactly.
And in this case, Justin was a whistleblower. It was his testimony that finally fucking brought Bryce to being arrested.
I will say that it was weird, though, that, like, given the fact that they know Bryce is somebody who commits sexual assault, I don't know why he was at the dance at the end, because it would seem that, like, that kind of thing he would be banned from.
Yeah, like he's on probation.
Exactly.
What does that even mean if he can go to a school dance with a bunch of high schoolers and his girlfriend? But he's rich.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's rich and from an affluent family.
I mean, this is almost a trope now, but I'm sure many of you listening to this know about the whole affluenza case where, like, a kid got drunk and drove and killed, like, 4 people. And then he got off, pretty much scot-free. And, like, the reason was because he had affluenza. And then, obviously, the whole thing with Bryce is parallel to the whole, like, Brock Turner case.
Oh, yeah.
That's another case where the punishment did not fit the crime.
Yeah, he was caught in the act. There were multiple witnesses. The victim came forward and gave testimony in that case, which is pretty rare for good reasons. Yeah. But even she came forward and gave, like, very specific depictions of what happened. He was found guilty and still got off scot-free because he is a rich, affluent, white athlete.
One thing that I will also say is, yes, you can get into the whole fact that, you have to register as a sex offender and stuff like that, but, as a poor person, that's going to be a lot harder for you to find work, etc., etc. Place of living.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to make your life a living hell if you are a registered sex offender, which I'm not saying that it shouldn't be that way. Obviously, I do think that there's some nuance with some cases. Like if somebody's 17 and somebody's 18 and it's completely consensual, but,
Well, there was
like
the 12-year-old who was taken to court for having child pornography because somebody sent him, a kid his age took a nude and he was sent that nude against his consent.
And, speaking about the photographs that were in this season, that could have happened to Clay because it was in his car. He could have been a registered sex offender for having those pornography.
And he knew it. He knew it. I mean, he brought that up, and at first I was pissed at him, and he said that. I was like, oh, yeah, actually, you're totally right. Holy shit. But again, this is a thing where it's like, maybe that shit wouldn't have happened if you called the cops.
Yeah.
Or talked to your teacher, or your counselor, or an adult, for God's sakes. Your mom's a lawyer. Like,
So let's get into this, because, like, this show has a real problem with authorities, like the
of
fact
any
that,
sort.
like, so
and there are no adults at the high school.
Yeah, like half the time you don't see teachers in the class.
They're not in the classroom. They're not in the lunch.
Hallways.
They're not in the hallways. They're not in the lunchroom. They're not at the school dance, for God's sakes.
They also don't have security guards. It's a fucking high school. Like,
it's a high school and there are no adults. Like, occasionally some adult will come into the hallway and say, the principal is calling you to his office. That is it. Other than that, there were 2 adults the entire season. The guidance counselor who's stuck in his office and eventually is told to have no direct contact with students, and Keiko Aganis' character, who is a teacher who's only in 1 fucking episode in the entire program, and she's not at the school. Like, a fight breaks out in the hallway and there are no adults. For like 5 minutes, the children have to break up the fight by pulling the fire alarm. Because the adults finally show up and they get involved in the fist fight. Justin shows up in the cafeteria, and that entire scene that unfolds in the cafeteria happens with no adults present. There's no cafeteria ladies. There's no, like, lunchroom monitor. There's no chaperone. Every time something bad happens in a classroom, like those pictures are hung up or there's a kid on their cell phone, there are no teachers there. Ever.
No.
Ever. It's insane how much shit is happening. Or, like, when Clay gets beaten up in the locker room. Like, okay, I get that there's not a teacher in the locker room while kids are getting undressed. But there's no one, like, outside of the locker room or in the hallway to hear, you know, him screaming for help. Or to see a bunch of kids walk in there with football helmets and, like, a pillowcase and then walk out immediately afterwards. And then almost that exact same situation happens again in the final episode. Where, like, nobody hears screaming and cries for help, and a sink breaking in the bathroom. Like, I get that there's not a teacher in the bathroom, but, like, no one hears this shit? There are no adults, except for the students, who are all clearly, like, 35-year-olds.
Yeah, so...
like, there's a drug dealer in the classroom, but there's no teacher. Yeah. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, so after all of these problems leading into the final episode, then the final episode happens. And part of it is good, and part of it is genuinely traumatizing, and part of it is really fucked up and unacceptable. So, Tyler's character, for the whole program leading up to this, we know he's going to be a school shooter. Yeah. We literally know for an entire season before this episode happens that Tyler is going... Yeah,
like episode 1, season 1, we know that he's going to be, like...
It was even back in the first season. When Alex shot himself in the head, I thought it was Tyler. I thought that Tyler had gone on a school shooting, because the way they handled it was really confusing. Yeah. But I thought that Tyler had committed a school shooting in season 1. And then in season 2, he has a bunch of guns. He brings a bunch of his friends to play around with guns, and nobody does anything about it.
He's like, then he has this whole, like, relationship with, like, this goth kid who's actually
Billy Joe. He is Billy Joe from Green Day. Like,
yeah, and
looks and acts and sounds and talks exactly like him.
And there were many parts of the season where I was like, I like their relationship, and I don't want this to turn into that, because that's kind of where
so typical. Like, it's so Paradise Lost.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, of course, it was the influence of the goth kids, and people are going to watch the season and think any kid who suddenly is into punk rock music is going to be a school shooter.
Or, you know, in counterculture, like,
tendencies of any kind. Like, clearly they're going to be a school shooter. But there were a lot of other things, like I said, the guns. Which, it's never explained, or maybe it was in season 1 and I just don't remember, but, like, Alex got a gun because it was his dad's gun and his dad is a police officer. I don't know how Tyler has a stash of guns. And again, this was established in season 1. Maybe I just don't remember.
I think there was, like, something where, like, he went to a store and, like, got some, but, like, I would need to go back and, like, watch that episode.
But in this season, he has a bunch of guns in his room and nobody knows about it. He goes into the wild and he brings a bunch of his friends with him and he's like, hey, let's shoot guns. Like, it's super casual.
Even though they get caught, like, every single time.
Every time, because they're on somebody's fucking property, and he keeps telling his parents, like, hey, your son's out here shooting guns. He's like, oh, they were BB guns. They were toy guns. And his parents buy it. I don't know why. But he's shooting guns. He's playing around with guns. He's telling kids about, like, how he deals with guns. He kills an animal. Oh, cruelty to animals. You know, he shot a bird at one point. I was like, oh, he's definitely a school shooter. And to be fair, some of these are signs that we have seen from school shooters. Mm-hmm. Mass shooters is a totally different thing because we don't know. Most mass shooters are not identified. Mass shooters is like a totally different thing. But school shooters, We catch a lot of them. We know a lot about what they do. A bunch of them do have paraphernalia of guns. Unlike Tyler, and unlike what there is some, like, social conversation about, there are many school shooters who were not bullied, who were not social outcasts, or who were social outcasts because they were fucking terrible people and not people. Like, there's kind of a conversation of, like, oh, well, these people who are shooting up schools, it's because they're being bullied. And they feel like that's their only way out. And for a lot of them, it's like, okay, first of all, they weren't bullied, or they are being bullied because they are bad people, in terms of, like, they talk about wanting to kill people, or they talk about white supremacy, or they are genuinely terrible towards other kids, or especially women. We see that a lot with school shooters, where, like, they are genuinely proven bad, toxic, evil people that you should not condone their actions. And then they took that a step further because they're extremists and they shot up a school.
I think a lot of that stems from Columbine, because, like, there's a lot of evidence to say that there was bullying, but there was a lot of antisocial behavior that they had before then, too.
Also, a few days before Columbine, there was a big group of them that got together and went to prom together and had a great time. I mean, like, they weren't that much of social outcasts. I'm talking more of, like, the Dylan Roofs, the Elliot Rogers, the fucking kid who did the Florida shooting, whose name I can't remember right now.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because I don't... Yeah, I saw a great thing online that was like, we shouldn't identify school shooters or mass shooters. We should just give them a number and not show their face and not tell their name, because we shouldn't reward their behavior with attention, and it would show how much we, like, fail on a daily basis by giving them a fucking number. Like, well, this is honestly, mass shooter... 2017, number 87.
Honestly, I like the idea of talking about the lives of the victims and talking about, like, oh, look at these heroes that, like, did stuff in their life, and look at what they did. Unfortunately, their lives have passed, but, like, let's elevate them. I think that's a good counter to this whole school, granted, media likes going down and dirty, so, like, right. They like exploiting this kind of stuff. But I agree with you that we shouldn't highlight these people. Yeah, we shouldn't make them feel like they're special. And one thing I did really like in this final episode, specifically because of the timing of watching it, it hits really close to home because the Santa Fe shooting happened very recently. And, I mean, every time there's a school shooting, or there's a mass shooting, or there's a shooting of any kind, it's really hard to take. It is really, really hard to take. But with the Santa Fe shooting, there was something very specific that was difficult to deal with, and it should be. There was a student who specifically said, I always thought it was going to happen here. This isn't a surprise. It's just terrifying. And that's really difficult to contend with because it's so fucking honest and true. And what this whole season built to, and what the finale did do very well, is that feeling of the anticipation of, at any moment, we're expecting a school shooting. Because that's a whole other kind of fucked up. The fact that we're at a point as a society of being okay with the fact that we just expect school shootings, and how unbelievably terrifying it is that we're at that point where it's not even surprising to hear about it. The big thing that's been going around lately in the news that I think needs to be said all the time is that it's safer to be in the American military than to be in a school in the United States. Because more teachers and students are dying in schools in 2018 than are dying in the military. Like, in 2018, more people have died in schools than in the military. I mean, not that people should be dying in the military, like, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that, like, we don't have a war on American soils. On American soil. We've had 2 acts of war and terrorism on American soil. Like, big ones. We've had smaller ones all over, and most of them have been shootings by American citizens. But we don't have foreign threats to America the same way that people in other countries have with the American military. No, gun violence is an epidemic in the United States, and, like, I know that there's all these debates and stuff, but, like, quite frankly, you can't argue with that. You can't argue that mass shootings aren't an epidemic in the United States, no matter what your stance is on what the legalization of firearms should be.
Yeah. And for the record, I am not for banning firearms.
I'm not for banning firearms
because
either.
As soon as you ban it, you're making it more dangerous. It needs to be safe, legal, regulated, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But most American citizens, Democrats and Republicans, NRA members and non-NRA members, I'm not talking about spokespeople for the NRA, I'm talking about like licensed, card-toting, gun-carrying NRA members. People who own guns, people who don't own guns, millennials, baby boomers, Gen X, most people, and by most people I mean more than half, like a clear majority of people along every single one of those demographic, little boxes you want to fit them into, all agree that we need more gun control. Most people agree with this. Most gun owners and NRA members agree that we need more gun control. And like common sense shit. Like there's no reason why getting a gun should be easier than driving a car. Things like that. Just like no reason why we have safety precautions on our medication, but we don't have safety precautions on getting a gun. And this whole shit of like, this gun is one issue where like state governments, this is not going to work. Going state by state. Marijuana, we can do shit like that because marijuana is a personal choice.
Yeah, we're
gun
talking about
violence
federally
is not
because granted, some states it's a lot stricter, and you can make that argument. Oh, well, there's this regulation, all that kind of stuff. But depending on what state you're in, like,
we live in fucking Chicago. Chicago has super strict gun laws, and shootings happen all the fucking time. And to be really brutally honest, in front of our eyes. But gun laws are super strict in Chicago. Therefore, gun laws are not preventing gun violence. It's because how fucking easy is it to go to any other place in Illinois or to go to fucking Indiana and get a gun and bring your gun back?
If you have a family member, you can claim permanent residence in another state, get a firearm there, and technically you are a member of that state, and then you just bring the gun over.
Yeah,
That's because
it's
you don't have federal
easy.
laws to do that.
There are some issues where I understand going state by state, and like when every state passes it, it is a victory, like Medicare for all or affordable college or legalizing marijuana. But like gun violence is not one of those things because the state line doesn't mean anything the way that like the American border means something. There is no difficulty crossing a state line.
Right.
There is literally nothing defining a state line besides a sign on one side of the line and a sign on the other side of the line. There is no importance to a state line whatsoever.
There aren't checks on state lines, and so long as people don't get caught with, stuff that they've brought over to other states, then there's no issue.
Right, and I'm not saying that when there's more gun control that will eliminate gun violence. Nobody is saying that gun violence will ever be fully eliminated, especially when America has always had gun culture. But gun laws, just like any other kind of law, just like driving laws and drinking laws and substance abuse laws and laws against theft and laws against rape, which are already pretty fucking abysmal, but you can't say that like just because you pass a law that says that stealing is illegal and if you do it you're going to be punished. Yeah, that doesn't fully prevent people from stealing. But it significantly reduces the amount of people who will steal. Duh.
Yeah,
it's about
there are some people that unless you make a law for it, they think it's legal.
Well, yeah, but also there is a thing of, you do need a legal punishment. And not the death penalty. Not the death penalty. But because I do not agree with the death penalty. If for no other reason than because if somebody does something so evil that they deserve to die over it, they deserve to suffer for the rest of their life for it. So, and then there's always the 4% chance that they are innocent, and all of that's not the issue. The issue is, gun violence is something that it's impossible to not be emotional over these days in America, because it happens so fucking often.
Right, and getting into this, so this show has made rape and suicide front and center.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sprinkle in the whole, gun violence thing, which, quite frankly, I have issues with it, but I'm also okay with it just because, this isn't a major issue that is on every kid's mind right now.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that they did actually prevent this one from happening because,
far.
Right.
And we need to get more into the specifics of that, but so far it has been prevented a little bit.
Right. And I'm somebody who can handle a lot, and this final episode was
traumatizing. It was very deeply traumatizing.
Yeah, I'm somebody who, like, I've seen Serbian film, I've seen, like, I watch a lot of, like, super fucked up stuff.
How many times have you seen Requiem for a Dream? For the record?
Over 10 times.
How many times have you seen Irreversible?
I've seen Irreversible 3 times.
How many times have you seen, what's that Columbine movie?
Oh, Elephant?
Yeah.
I've seen Elephant about 4 times.
Okay. I'm building a record of, like, you can deal with shit.
I've also seen Antichrist, like, 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
A Serbian film I think I've seen 6 times.
And I've seen all of these films at least once, and Serbian film I will defend to my dying day as a work of art, and as a deeply important film that has a lot to say, not any of this, like, hiding behind, oh, this is just being shocking for the sake of being shocking. No, it is being shocking for the sake of talking about very upsetting and disturbing topics.
And
like,
quite frankly,
on purpose, and it should be.
Yeah, quite frankly, I kind of wish the show did more of that. There are ways to show very shocking things that feels appropriate, and then there are ways to kind of try to dip into both areas. And let's get into this.
Let's get into this scene. I will say my problem with the scene is not the fact that it was disturbing and traumatizing, because that's the only way I know that it was done right. We'll get into what the scene is, but if you had the scene in your movie and it wasn't disturbing and traumatizing, that means you're doing it wrong, because it needs to be something that you can't watch comfortably, because it's not something that is acceptable to deal with comfortably. But it's something that should be, we all need to come to terms with. It kind of deals with one of my problems with 13 Reasons Why, of, like, you keep talking about Hannah Baker's suicide the whole time, and you kind of dismiss Alex's suicide attempt, when suicide, I don't believe in gendering social issues, but suicide affects men statistically far more than women. It does. And the show does a lot to kind of trivialize abuse and trauma to men, and, like, really bring up trauma and abuse towards women. And this was a scene where it was like, it's something I've complained about is only brought up in media as a joke, and I always find deeply disturbing when it's brought up as a joke, and this time it was dead fucking serious and truly terrifying, and I appreciate that. Just as a disclaimer, that's a huge disclaimer, but, like, this one scene on its own without the whole rest of the episode was done very well, but was so traumatizing.
Yeah, like, I was not prepared for the show to go this far.
Yeah.
You had the stuff with Hannah Baker, you had the stuff with
Chloe and Jessica
and all that kind of stuff.
And then, but with Alex, all off screen. With Jeff, all off screen. With Justin, the stuff that's on screen is not that difficult to handle. There's not any real traumatic abuse towards men that is graphically depicted on the show ever.
Even though, like, statistically speaking, like, men and boys are oftentimes more victims of violence than women. Women, it does tend to get into other categories.
It's hard to say that. It's hard to say that because when you get into statistics, you bring up things like, well, women are 3 times more likely than men to be raped by a stranger, but men are 3 times more likely to be stabbed and or murdered by a stranger than women. And it's like, okay, well, do we really need to be comparing it, or do we need to just be talking about these, like, social issues? And when you talk about people you know, virtually every form of violence and abuse is pretty much equal among men and women, as both victims and abusers. Men and women are almost equally...
I would say the combination is more prevalent among men, victims and abusers, though when you get in to, like, children and...
Statistically, it's hard to say, but my point is that it's so close that it needs to not be gendered. Because men and women are almost equally as likely to be abusers, and men and women of all ages are almost equally as likely to be abused in terms of domestic violence, in terms of interpersonal relationship violence, in terms of emotional abuse, in terms of sexual abuse, with people that are known to them. If you want to talk about strangers, things become a little bit different, but I've heard a lot of professional experts talk about, like, even women in women's shelters and in domestic violence shelters, a lot of them are abusers. Abuse is generally a two-way street, and that's something that we don't talk about in America. The cycle of abused into abuser. That is not talked about enough. And it needs to be, because many times people who are abusive are people who have been abused, and it is a cycle that they perpetuate because that is what they are taught. But we don't talk about that because female victims are more likely to be discussed than male victims when they are discussed. And on both cases, with both male and female and non-binary, transgender, anyone who doesn't fit into a male-female spectrum. Although, if you don't fit into a male-female victim, your chances of being abused in any way skyrocket. So, I feel like it's almost not even fair to make that comparison. Right. But my point is that these are not gendered issues. We need to start discussing them as cultural problems. And not that, when it happens to boys in media, it's okay to make a joke about it. I mean, it is. It is. Wait, let me backtrack.
Statutory rape especially is one that I rarely ever see. When it happens to boys by a female perpetrator, I rarely ever see that not taken as, a victory or a joke.
Yeah, in the movie Fist Fight, there's a female guidance counselor who is sexually harassing a teenage student, and it's a joke. It's supposed to be funny. And it's supposed to be a subversion of the joke when the student is like, oh, hey, I've been into it the whole time. And I'm 18. Not that you knew that. And then it's just all suddenly morally okay. Things like that are deeply disturbing. I am going to bring up Deadpool, too. I said it's not okay to make it a joke. Deadpool made a bunch of, male rape jokes between Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2, most of which are not acceptable. There's one that I thought was actually a really good joke and was kind of acceptable. I shouldn't say that rape and abuse and violence should never be joked about, because there are cases where if you do it well and from a place of trying to talk about it, it's kind of okay. I don't want to say anything is taboo or off the table.
Yeah. And when you get into censorship and all that kind of stuff, to me, what I say is there has to be a level of tact.
Right. But what I am saying is that in media, as a trend, with very, very rare exceptions, including this episode, abuse of any kind towards men is normalized and or made into a joke. Yeah. And any kind of abuse towards women is generally taken very seriously.
I mean, there are exceptions. There
Absolutely.
Are times, we talked about 16 Candles, where it's really messed up.
It's super fucked up. Yeah.
How it's, nonchalantly kind of joked around about. And, there are
isn't this rapist so dreamy? Yeah.
Yeah, there are some issues with films in the 80s that do that. So, there's a spectrum of this kind of thing. But, this seems to be a modern phenomenon that's going on. But, certainly in this episode...
So this scene with Tyler...
Yeah, he gets beaten up by one of Bryce's friends.
No, by a group of Bryce's friends.
Yeah. And they take a broom...
Mop.
Yeah.
I mean, the beating beforehand was already really terrible.
Yeah,
that was already really brutal. Intense. Tyler's character has been kind of difficult to deal with because he has kind of been a shitty person.
Yeah.
Which, for a school shooter storyline, I kind of appreciate, because a lot of these school shooters, once you know a little bit about their history, they are fucked up people that you wouldn't really want to interact with.
His creepy stalker stuff with taking photographs of everybody and oh hey, I'm gonna hang out by Hannah's house and take
and I'm gonna go to court and talk about how she was sexting somebody and how I took pictures because I was madly in love with her and I wanted to make sense of why she would be sexting some fucking guy when she couldn't be with me because I'm just such a nice guy.
Yeah, and when people got mad at him, I thought it was totally justified. Yeah, he was a fucking creeper.
Yeah. And then there was the whole date with his best friend's sister. That does kind of need to be addressed for the scene to make sense. Because there's a scene where, he goes on a date with the best friend's sister, and I don't know how it got there, because the sister knew that he was a creep towards women, and the brother knew that he was a creep towards women. That had been established as fact. Because Tyler admitted to it in court, and the tapes had been released, and Hannah's side of the story had come out. But for some reason, the sister still wanted to go on a date with him. And they go to a date, they go to the movies, they're holding hands, they're making out, and he comes all over his pants. It's just that's the thing that happens. Whatever.
I will say I thought that was kind of funny because I was thinking of the Lonely Island song.
Yeah.
But...
Right, exactly. But then she talks about it in public, and then he makes an ass of himself by treating her badly because he's trying to be cool. I don't know why he thought that being a shithead to her was going to make him look cool in front of his friends, but then Billy Joe comes over
Especially
and
when
it's
it's
like, fuck you.
his sister. Like,
Well, he didn't know Billy Joe was there. It was his other friends who were there watching them. But she was kind of like, oh, what happened to you was normal. I read that it was normal. It's totally fine, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I don't want all my friends to know that I, like, came all over my pants. So let me just say directly to your face that I don't like you and I think that you're boring and I don't want to date you and you suck. And then Billy Joe comes over and tells him to get the fuck out. But then at school he's being bullied. People are like, oh, do you want to go on a date? Oh, and they like cover him full of like fake jizz, you know. And we both laughed at that. Yeah. We did both laugh at that, even though it was fucked up and not a cool thing for them to do. But we both laughed. And that's how, like, a lot of the stuff going into the scene did really work for Tyler's character, because even though he is a school shooter, like, he is, like, there were all the signs of being a school shooter, and we both knew it was gonna happen. Mm-hmm. We were still like, you're a shitty person, and you kind of deserve to be bullied, and, like, nobody did anything. You know, they made the narrative work for Tyler a lot more than they made it work for Hannah. Yeah. A lot more than they made it work for Hannah. And to Tyler's defense, in terms of, like, him not coming to anybody about it makes a lot more sense, because his parents are already worried about him and micromanaging him, so of course he doesn't want to talk to his parents. They already think that because he listens to rock music that there's something fucked up with him and his friends are bad influence or whatever. We already know that he's done a lot of illegal shit, so he doesn't want to go to the authorities. He just saw all this shit with Hannah Baker's trial of, like, nobody being held accountable and nothing being taken seriously. So, like, why the fuck would he go to an adult or call 911 or talk to a teacher? It makes a lot more sense for him. But then in this scene, where he's being brutalized by this group of jocks, and the beating is really bad.
The beating is very graphic and, like, accurate. I mean,
it is brutality. This is not like bullying. This is really fucked up. Like, you need to be in prison for the rest of your life. Like, busting his head into the sink and breaking it. It's just, it was already really hard to watch.
And then when they take him to the toilet
and try to drown him,
and then they shove a mop up his ass.
They raped him.
Yeah, that's considered rape with a foreign object, legally.
Legally, it is considered rape with a foreign object. Morally, that is fucking rape.
And more so than that, physically, what that does to your body is worse than rape.
Oh, don't say that. Being raped is already really bad to your body.
What they did, I don't know.
They didn't shy away from how physically gruesome it was.
Okay, what they did, based on that angle and everything like that, I don't necessarily know if you could be alive after that attack.
I mean, I was seriously I kind of thought maybe he wouldn't be a school shooter because he would try to shoot up the school and he would die before he could do it. It was that gruesome. And it was graphic. It was really graphic.
There have been people who have died from that exact same thing.
Exactly.
Happened.
Yeah, and it was very graphic. They were holding him down.
On a moral standpoint.
No, I know, but I'm saying, like, the way that the scene was handled, him being brutalized was very graphic. The way that they were all holding him down, and he was screaming and crying for help, and they were covering his mouth, and they were all in it together. And you kind of see it happening, and you see, like, it was a lot like watching a Serbian film. Spoilers for a Serbian film, and also, like, this is super disturbing, the way I'm about to describe it, but there's a scene where he's raping his son, and it's a model in real life. Like, it's a dummy, like, nobody was hurt, it's fine. There was no actual kid on set ever, but his son is being covered with a blanket, and technically you're not supposed to know it's his son, but you can tell by the way that he is fucking the body that it is obviously a child, even though he doesn't know that it's a child. You can tell by the way that he's doing it that he is raping a child. And this scene was a lot like that, where, like, yes, you don't physically see the handle being inserted, but you can tell how deep it's going and how long it's going for, and how fucking physically traumatic it is. And after it's over, you see, like, the blood on the mop handle.
Well, and you can also tell, based on the mop handle, how deep it was. Went.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell by the reaction, but then you get that confirmation too, where it's like, oh my. You can tell by the way he's screaming. Like, it is a traumatizing scene.
And part of our issue with that scene is the fact that they juxtapose this with a tie scene.
That scene is pretty short, and Tyler doesn't have very much screen time afterwards. He has exactly 2 scenes in the entire episode after that scene happens.
Whereas Hannah and
Jessica? A lot less. No, I don't think Jessica did, but Hannah most definitely did.
But there was a lot more. There was a lot more surrounding that. I'm not talking about like.
It was serious before. It was serious during, and then like the whole episode was about what had happened for both Jessica and Hannah.
Right. That's
when there were episodes
I wasn't
with
saying
rape,
like the actual like.
Yeah.
Like the actual like rape itself, but like you know, like how much time is centered around that experience.
Right. Whereas
this one it's brutal. You know that there's going to be something that happens after that, but like that's something that like if you're going to show, you can't just go to something like chipper after that. I get that that's what the audience would want and all that kind of stuff, but like that's something
that's not what I wanted when I was the audience watching it. It's so disturbing to go from that scene directly into like, oh, Zach is being really sweet to Alex and wants to teach him how he's gonna slow dance with Jessica, and oh well, isn't it super cute how what's his name, Clay is trying to teach Justin how to tie a tie, and isn't it funny? And like, I know that the point of it is supposed to be how can people laugh and joke around and have a good time when somebody's in so much agony, but as like as an audience, like you can't just cut away from that and like focus on anything else. You can't like just have that scene stop and not just only be thinking about that scene afterwards.
Well, and if you were going to do something like that, I would say that it should have been centered around the jocks joking around.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, that way
like how do they live with themselves?
Yeah, that way you're still in the context of that scene, but you're moving on.
Right. And unfortunately there was not a lot of consideration for Tyler's feelings after that scene. What was super disturbing is that there were only 2 scenes. The scene where he goes to the school, and there's one other scene in between where he's at home and his mom's asking about him through a door, and he's like, no, I'm fine. Everything's cool. And he goes to the bathroom and he's still bleeding profusely. Because you're not going to walk away from that and be fine physically. But no, that's not going to happen.
At the same time, like, I'm really curious logistically, just because of how much internal damage that causes, you know, like how logistically, you know, I know it's a show, you know, blah, 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 but like
how did he even make it to the school?
Exactly.
I mean, that's one thing that
like, you know, et cetera, like,
that's one problem, but then another really big problem is he's not just bleeding out of his ass privately. Besides the fact that he would bleed through his underwear and his pants, and everyone would see, He was brutalized. The show is not good. The makeup on the show is really, really terrible. In terms of, a lot of people get beat up all throughout the show and they look fine afterwards, and people are like, wow, you look bad, and it's like, no, they don't. They look exactly like they did 20 minutes ago.
Especially Clay, like, when he got beaten up by those jocks, like, he should have been, like, he should have
swollen. Like, should have been fucked up. But even though the makeup did not go nearly as far as it needed to, Tyler had a clean face, and then his head was smacked into a sink, and it broke. Like, he was busted up. And you're telling me that not only did nobody at the school, particularly faculty, nobody heard what happened in the bathroom, but he walked out of that bathroom and walked around the school, and nobody noticed that he was beat up. And he got into his car and made it all the way home, and his parents didn't see that he was beaten up. Like, he has all of this, like, physical telltale trauma, and, like, literally nobody noticed until he showed up to school with a gun.
Yeah, but, like...
And not on purpose.
But
not on purpose of, like...
His mom, given how much damage was just done to his face, like, how much we saw... There should be a lot more blood. There should be a lot, everything. And the fact that they don't include that does make that scene have a lot less impact, but it also, like, creates a lot of logistical problems with this situation. Like, you know, because I'm just going, like, that much inserted, you know, all this kind of stuff. Like, I don't even see how he is conscious.
Yeah, and it's not the actor's fault because there's a very short moment where he's in the bathroom stall after the fact, and his performance is incredible.
Yeah.
And the actor, he's been really, really good throughout the entire program, but like that scene was just like another level. But
I do kind of feel bad for the actor because of like how much his character has to be like abused throughout the entire
well,
series.
At least it's not the actor who plays Justin, where he spent almost all of his time on screen just vomiting.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I did think was interesting is like the actor who plays Bryce is like the first one who appears on like a lot of stuff. So it's like, hey, you know, in real life, I'm actually like a decent dude, you know, because like the show like constantly like wants to show you like outside of this, like, oh, by the way, let's not ruin his career because he did this role. Yeah, which happens to some people.
It does.
I mean, it happened
to Joffrey.
Exactly.
But, I mean, like, logistically, yeah, this show goes so insanely out of its way with everybody, and then including Tyler, to bends over backwards and creates this otherworldly dimension where, like, somehow nobody notices ridiculously obvious signs of trauma and violence and abuse and does nothing about it because they're not around. And, like, they try to sue the school over negligence, but, like, realistically, there is no way that all of this shit would be going down as publicly as it does, and that literally no one would see or hear or witness anything or try to do anything about it. Especially, like, there was a little bit of foreshadowing to what was going to happen with Tyler, because the counselor is like, hey, here's a list of kids who... These need to be our top concern after what we saw happened with Hannah. They need to be checked in with every week, if not every single day. And the very top of the list is Tyler, which I'm assuming he did it in order of need and not alphabetically, because otherwise that doesn't make sense to put him at the top. Yeah. But clearly there was already like an adult concern over his well-being.
Expressed a concern.
Yeah, Billy Joe actually called people and was like, hey, I think he's gonna do something bad, and he went to disciplinary camp or whatever the fuck.
And I will say, like...
That was the only time that somebody reached out to authority.
Not to condemn him too much, but, like, he did somewhat facilitate that.
Billy Joe?
Yeah.
Why?
With all of his, like, pranks and all that kind of stuff.
No, but Billy Joe always did things in moderation. Like, when we thought it was going to be a bombing and it was just, like, a paint balloon. Or, like, when it's graffiti. Like, oh my god, it's felony-level graffiti vandalization, but, like, it's fucking paint. And then when he saw any modicum of, like, true violence or threat, he went to authorities and he dealt with it the way that he should have dealt with it, honestly. He's the only person who has any common fucking sense.
The one thing that I don't understand about this show is the lack of security guards at a school, because
or lack of faculty. Where are any goddamn teachers?
Yeah, because, like, you know, with that situation where the paint exploded and all that kind of stuff, I get that was just paint, but after
that's
all
stains,
this stuff,
by the way.
Well, yeah, but after all the stuff that has happened, like, recently, I don't see a school taking that lightly.
Yeah, like, a kid just committed suicide, and another kid shot themselves in the head trying to commit suicide. And another kid fucking died. And, like, there are all these tapes, and there's legally a trial being held against the school. How are they not, like, watching their back at every fucking moment? Like, there's so much suspension of disbelief the way...
Like, suspending and expelling people, like, left and right.
Or, like, just fucking being there. Okay, let me put it to you this way. AP Bio. I've only seen, like, maybe 3 episodes of that program. It's a half hour, I think, maybe. Comedy. It's like a fucking sitcom. Not with the laugh track, but it's like a fucking sitcom that's about how stupidly terrible this teacher who's trying to teach AP Bio is, and how irresponsible he is. And one of the reoccurring problems on the program is that he keeps leaving students unattended, and the principal is trying to deal with the fact that all of these students who are nerdy students being left alone in a classroom to study biology. It's like an ongoing problem is that he's trying to figure out how to make sure that there is always an adult present in the room. On a comedy, we take it as like a fucking given that there will always be an adult present whenever there is anything happening in the school. There should always be at least one adult present. In a comedy, we take that for granted. On a show that's trying to deal with serious issues, there are no faculty members anywhere, ever, to see the stuff that is blatantly happening all over campus. The clubhouse is not that. So that makes sense. But like, in the bathrooms, in the classrooms, in the lunch hall, in the hallway, there's nobody there.
And I could even understand that, like, the coach knows about the clubhouse and all that kind of stuff. Like, that even seems like, you know, that would, like, make sense.
Yeah.
But, like...
More reasonable.
Yeah, it's really frustrating that, like, I get that they want the show to be centered around the students, but at least have, like, some extras that you hire to be present so that people know that there are teachers around when this stuff is going on.
But my issue is that when you erase the faculty and you erase their presence, you're erasing them as a viable option to seek help from.
Which
to people who are watching the program.
Exactly. You know, and you can't just hide behind the idea of like, oh, just don't watch this show.
No, that's not acceptable. Like, what happens is that after that scene, Tyler is going to go to the school dance, the spring fling, and he's going to shoot it up. That's his plan. He sent his best friend's sister a text message. We don't see what the text message says, but she goes to her brother and says, oh my god, he sent me a message. The brother, who has already reported him to authorities before because he thought that he was a threat to the school and to other people's lives, he sees the text and he brings it to all the friends. And all the friends are looking at this text and they're like, oh my god, we know for a fact that Tyler, I don't know what the text message says, but they looked at it and they were all like, we know for a fact that Tyler is coming over to shoot up the school. We know this is something that is going to happen. And Zach says, we need to call 911. And everyone says, no, we do not need to call 911. They're at a school dance and there's not a goddamn chaperone there. There is no faculty there. They are not considered as an option. It is packed, and Bryce Walker is there. Yeah, a fucking rapist is there. A known convicted rapist is there. And there is no faculty there because they are considered a non-option. Nobody says we need to talk to a teacher. Nobody says we need to call a parent. Nobody says we need to talk to an adult. One kid says we need to call the police, and he's right. And everyone else told him, no, we can't do that. We are underage children, and we must handle this ourselves again. You know that there is a school shooter coming to your school, and this TV show tells you that if you know that it is going to happen, you need to not call the police, not talk to adults. You need to go straight up to the shooter and try to talk him down off that ledge and help him get away from the scene of the crime. No! You do not approach a school shooter. You do not teach children to approach a school shooter. And this is already a big problem that we're dealing with socially. I am not blowing this out of proportion. We are already in a situation where all over America, schools are saying, like, we need to have a pile of rocks so that way then if a school shooter comes into the school, we need to pelt him with rocks. Or, oh, well, we need to make sure that teachers who want to bring a gun to school are legally able to bring a gun to school so that then if there's a school shooter, the teacher can shoot the school shooter. A fucking student in almost every single case, a minor, we need to tell teachers that they need to shoot a student. Which by the way, that's not even getting into students being able to have access to a gun. Not even getting into any of that. We're already at a point where we're talking about like, oh, well, we need to have more police officers in school, even though in many of these school shootings, there is an officer on campus who does fucking nothing. We're already in a point where we're like, let's develop video games to help teachers deal with school shooter incidents. We're already at a point where fucking elementary school students are terrified to wear light-up sneakers to school because they might be spotted by a fucking school shooter. We're already at a point where people do school shootings and have lockdowns on a regular basis over anything. Yeah. Any kind of like little thing promotes a school shutdown. Okay, in my city, there was a preschool that was put on lockdown for an hour because a mom had a stroller and the tire on the stroller blew out. And there was a lockdown on the preschool because everyone heard that sound and thought that it was a school shooter. The university that I work next to had a shutdown that extended not just to the school and the campus, but to all the surrounding businesses. Because somebody fucking doxed someone on campus, which is totally bullshit. But we all immediately believed that there was a school shooter situation. We're dealing with this all the fucking time. And in this climate, We're already talking about teachers needing to bring guns to school and having to have fucking rocks to pelt shooters with, and all this misinformation about how, oh, well, if there's a school shooter, why doesn't everybody in the classroom just, rush at him? Because the shooter can't shoot everyone all at once, even though in a lot of the cases, yes, they can. Fuck you, yes, they can. We're already in that climate, and you made an episode of television directed specifically at minors and underage children with mental health issues and depression and issues with bullying and violence and abuse, and you told them all that if they know for a fact that there's a school shooter, that they should not call the police and they need to approach the shooter directly.
The only thing that I liked about the moment with the confrontation that Clay had with Tyler was the fact that he said, this is a tragedy that people will feel bad about for a week, then, forget about it.
Which is true. I know this is like a cliche at this point, but after Sandy Hook, people in charge decided that it was okay for children to die in schools on a regular basis.
And
everybody said that was fucking okay. Not everybody, like citizens. Yeah. Because we're all still upset about it. But I'm talking about politicians and people who actually have control over these things. People in power decided that that's acceptable.
And then you got, extreme, alternate news that they can't even accept that as a reality, so they have to say that it was staged.
I will defend those people. Not that that's an acceptable thing to do, because it's not, but that is how fucking horrifying the reality of our current climate in America is that most people just reject that as a possibility because it's that horrific.
Yeah, it's this must have been something that is fabricated.
Because there's no way that could have happened.
Reality of, yeah, exactly. But I mean, we had this at a country rock concert last year where people were just trying to enjoy a show and they were just gunned down.
I mean, that hasn't only happened in America, but it happens more in America than it happens anywhere else.
It happens practically once a week.
School shootings happen, or not school shootings, mass shootings. As in, legally, 3 to 4 or more people are shot and injured and or killed. That happens at least once a day, if not more often.
And let's not shy away from the fact that, yes, in many circumstances, they're not discussed because they happen to people that fall under socioeconomic or racial minorities.
And they're also not talked about because the shooter isn't caught. Yeah. And we don't want to talk about all the times that mass shooters get away. And that's mass shooters. That's not even the amount of time that shootings happen, or including school shootings.
Yeah, I mean, there was a school shooting that happened close to where I grew up. It happened in Noblesville. I grew up in Indianapolis, and there was a school shooting just last week. This happens way too often, and I do think that it's an issue that we have to discuss. And, I know some people are like, oh, we hear about it too much. Well, if we hear about it too much, it should stop happening. And I've had conversations with people, and I understand both sides of the argument. I understand people trying to protect their Second Amendment rights and their right to keep themselves safe from shooters. But,
they have to be responsible
something
people.
Has to be done. One thing that has to be done that even people that are the most pro-gun can agree on is something that the show doesn't do enough to talk about. We have to directly address mental illness. It is a major problem in the United States. Also, I would say the cultural problem of individualism in the United States, feeds into stuff. But yeah, we need to make it easy. We need to make it really easy for people, especially underprivileged people, to have access to mental health care. I get that people don't want to, pay for medical stuff, which I think is stupid, but, I get that, people have hostilities towards universal health care. But
not most Americans on both sides.
Yeah, that being said, I get that there's some people that do, but I think most people would agree that this issue regardless of what your position is on this, there is eventually going to be a decision made, and that could be either to improve mental health care, that could be regulating firearms, or that could be creating a police state. And I don't think that the last two are something that most people want. I know
regulating firearms? Banning firearms, you mean?
Banning firearms.
Yeah. No, an all-out ban is not the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there also needs to be more punishment for shooters. Because there are so many times where, like, this is a sign of how insanely biased and racist our institutions of government are. But, you know, we see black people murdered by police all the time for being unarmed or for, we thought that they were armed, but they had a cell phone in their hand, which does not look like a gun, no matter how hard you try to spin that truth.
The only time that I saw that and said, hey, I actually understand, is where a guy had pipe.
Oh, that was pretty bad.
That looked bad.
That did look bad. But that was one time.
Yeah.
That was one time. Ever. And probably not ever, but out of all of the times that has happened. How many mass shooters and school shooters have been arrested without anything done to them whatsoever?
A lot.
A lot of these rich, affluent white kids are getting off scot-free for murdering people. Like, just straight up killing people and being armed with a gun. And police can arrest them safely. Which I'm not saying that they need to be killed, because I don't believe in that, but there are a lot of problems outside of the school system that are contributing to school shootings. And it's not just that, kids are getting bullied in school, because plenty of people who are bullied are not shooting up schools.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was bullied in school, and I was a violent kid. You know, I got into some fights, but, that's kind of something that you deal with, like, growing up and stuff like that, especially boys. There's a culture of, working things out with violence.
Actually, to be fair to the show, Tyler probably has a better reason for being a school shooter than most school shooters have in real life. And I do not feel bad for making fun of these kids, but these kids are like, oh no, I wanted to date this girl and she didn't say yes, so I murdered a bunch of women.
Yeah, go for it.
This kid, before he became a school shooter, was brutalized and raped. And this was part of, like, a long, ongoing thing of him wanting criminals and violent predators to be punished for their actions and seeing that not happen. And then it happened to him, and then he became a school shooter. Like, to be fair to the script for the season, if anyone's going to become a school shooter, like, the most understandable way is with something like that, with, like, a long build-up for something like that. But
to be fair to the script and what we've seen, he didn't actually become a school shooter.
We'll see what happens. But it all falls apart and becomes completely unacceptable when the way to deal with school shooting is horribly, I don't know how to say this, that's just mismanaged, and it's a terrible lesson to teach children. But then also, you had this whole episode that was about something, like, horrific and traumatic, and there's no resolution to it, and there's no, like, real proper way of how do you deal with it, and then you left everyone on a cliffhanger for the next season.
Yeah, so, it's like, what's going to happen to Clay, because he literally has an AR-15 outside of a school.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, he's literally holding it, but, I mean, more importantly, like, it's not like kids are not going to need to deal with the issues brought up in this episode before season 3 comes out.
Yeah, I almost feel that they needed, kind of like what they did with last season, like, just, like, a buffer episode, just, like, something to, like, cushion it off before you just give a cliffhanger to this. Because, like, what? You're going to wait, like, a year for the next season to come out? And, I already know that this season is, like, causing controversy and stuff like that. And, I did hear that there was a brutal rape scene, and people were like, wait, what? But I didn't know, like, to the extent of, like, what it was going to be, because, like, I just thought it was going to be, like, Hannah or Jessica, which is not to say that those aren't horrible and horrific in and of themselves, but, like, to me, this is on a different level.
I don't necessarily feel a need to compare them.
Okay.
But, because, I mean, it's horrific and brutal and unacceptable no matter how and to whom and by whom and whatever.
There was more tact with those.
There was more tact with those because both of those scenes were brought up in the middle of the season with some time for the show to deal with those issues and to talk about those issues. And again, they did not deal with it well when it happened to Jessica or Hannah. In the first season or the second season, there was still never, ever a thing of like, oh, if you've been raped, maybe you should talk to somebody and it won't blow up in your face and make you want to kill yourself. That never happened. But it's a little bit different when it's a school shooter because, you know, the show's talking about a serial rapist, and like this season was doing a good job of explaining that, like, even though a rape happens to you, it's not only your story. And there is, like, a sort of a sense of community and, like, even a sense of, like, you need to do this to prevent it from happening again, which I thought was really good and a responsible message.
Kind of like the Metoo montage that happens in the courtroom.
Right. I mean, like, okay, that was really well done, first of all. But second of all, that's still something that is intimately kind of happening between two people, and it's really difficult to prove. And the show kind of was pointing to a lot of the reasons why, legally, it's really difficult for rape victims to come forward because the legal system punishes the shit out of you for accusing somebody of raping you or for coming forward with an accusation of rape. Even when it's true, you are brutally punished for that legally. And the show didn't even get into like all the ways that's true, but they kind of tried to address it. But that is still an issue where it's kind of like a one-on-one, intimate, hard to prove kind of a situation. If you're talking about like a school shooting, that goes out the window in terms of being about, like, your personal rights or being hard to prove or not, like, having a witness and all of that. And with that situation, they were still, like I said, the show kind of deals a lot more with why, if you've been raped, why it's really difficult to come forward. But still, they were ultimately like, you need to do it. You know, they were still like, talk to your parents, talk to the police, file a report, like, all of this legal stuff. They were still like, you still need to do something about it. With a school shooter, a lot of the personal liberty shit goes out the window. Because you did not make a personal choice. You do not have the personal freedom to get shot out by a school shooter. Yeah, fuck that. That is not acceptable.
Even attempted ones, too.
Right, exactly. That is not acceptable. So the fact that this show ends by giving this message that when this happens, don't go to authorities, don't tell a teacher, don't tell an adult, don't call 911. And it will work out for the better. And also, let's not emotionally deal with any of this stuff.
I don't know if the show is necessarily saying that, but they are presenting a situation where that is an outcome.
They are, but this is what they've been doing repeatedly for 2 entire seasons. Don't talk to adults. Don't go to authorities. Don't report criminal activity. Criminal activity! Don't deal with adults on this. If you're a teenager and you are legally a minor, you can totally handle this on your own. If it wasn't for the fact that they had already established this in a variety of scenarios over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, maybe it wouldn't be this hard to deal with, but the fact that they went to like, oh, when you know for a fact that there is going to be a school shooter, because he has shown all the signs of becoming a school shooter, and he sent a text message indicating that he is going to shoot up a school dance, don't listen to the kid who says call 911. Specifically, do not listen to that kid. Do not call 911. Do not alert the authorities. Approach the shooter yourself and fix it yourself. That is so grossly irresponsible and disgusting. Like, how fucking dare you tell teenagers and kids, because, I mean, let's face it, even younger than teenagers watch this show. Kids are not watching this if they're between the ages of 16 and 17. There are younger kids watching this show, too.
I understand the whole thing about let's barricade things and stuff like that, because yeah, if there is an active shooter involved, then you do want to block areas in order for them to come in.
If you are a child or underage or not the authority responsible for the event, you do not barricade an event. Even if there isn't a school shooter involved, that's a fucking safety hazard. Okay, basic fire hazard instructions are you do not block off all entrances. Like, if somebody needs to get out, they're gonna start freaking out because they can't leave the room. Like, I mean, like, that's just basic common sense. Don't tell kids to... Yes, you barricade it after you tell everybody what the situation is and what is going on, and an adult who is responsible for the situation and that space and the event...
That's really complicated because...
We'll barricade it. Like, no.
That's really complicated because given given the circumstances that they were in, I can understand doing that as like a quick deterrent.
Maybe as a quick deterrent if you're doing that in addition to calling the police and letting a chaperone know about it. You do not take it upon yourself to barricade it yourself. Let me put it to you like this. Somebody has a seizure while this is happening, and they're trying to call 911, and the police can't get into the room and nobody knows why.
Well, in a case of a shooting, I'm sorry, that person with the seizure doesn't take precedence.
No. To you and me who know that there is an active shooter, of course not. But nobody else in the room knows that. The adults in the room do not know that. That's what I'm saying. Is like, you don't have a bunch of ignorant people who are ignorant of the situation of the school shooter locked up in a room together with no escape in terms of an emergency situation. You don't do that. This is why when you hear that there's a school shooter, you go to a fucking authority. Or you think that there's going to be violence on campus, you go to an authority. Or you think that there's going to be an emergency situation, you go to an authority. It's not that fucking hard. We learned this from preschool until like all the way through college and after. It's not that hard. That should be your first instinct. And it was for Zach. He said call 911 and everyone, including the show, said no, we don't talk to the police. Why? What is one good fucking reason not to call the cops? When you know for a fact that there's going to be a school shooter at a school dance, what is a legitimate reason why you should not call the cops? Or tell somebody at the event, an adult who's responsible.
If you're black.
Okay, if you're black, like, I understand not calling the police, but nobody in that situation was black.
Sorry. But you
I do understand that. Yeah. No, I do understand that in general.
Yeah.
But, like, come on. There's no reason to tell kids that if there is a school shooting happening, do not call 911.
Well, I mean, the crazy thing is, like, you know, it's a school dance. Why isn't there security there?
Why isn't there a group of chaperones? Nobody chaperones an event by themselves.
Honestly, whenever there was stuff like that at my high school, there were cops hanging out outside.
There were cops hanging out, there are parents hanging out, there are teachers hanging out, there's faculty there. There are a bunch of fucking responsible adults.
Like, we used to joke around that there was too much, like, faculty, too much protection to the point where it was lame. Well, and nobody wanted to go to those things because it was just like, well, yeah.
I mean, you did have Bryce Walker, a convicted rapist, at the dance drinking out of a flask publicly and not even attempting to hide it. I mean, like, this is like a fucking bizarro dimension, but like, this is not...
It's a bizarro dimension. Like, it would make sense if this show was a period piece, but...
Or not happening in a rich white area.
Yeah.
Like, let's face it, but like, this is unacceptable. Yeah. And this is exactly the reaction I had at the end of season 1, and at the end of almost every episode of season 1, of the way that the show is handling these serious things is completely unacceptable.
And there was a period during this season where we were super invested and
we were like, oh shit, you've like actually learned that what you did last time was not okay and you're trying to fix it and you're trying to like provide more resources and talk more openly about it, and then you turned around and you did it again. For the sake of being entertaining. Fuck you.
Also, speaking about firearms, like, you spoke about the fact that you actually saw the show explicitly show loading a firearm was an issue.
Oh shit, that's true. There is a scene in this season. Tyler and Billy Joe are out in the woods and they're shooting guns and they get caught, and Tyler's parents get notified and then they get taken to a gun range to be taught how to handle guns safely, which, I mean, is a good idea. If you find out that, like, your teenage son is having unprotected sex, you sit them down and you tell them how to have safe sex. You don't tell them don't have sex. Okay. But there is a scene where, like, they do a, like, specific tutorial of, like, here is how you load a gun.
Also, like, I do want to say, like, the issue that I have with that scene, personally, is the fact that you don't have a briefing on weapon safety. Because, like, you're going to have
They did say gun safety 101 rule of, like, treat every firearm like it's loaded and the safety is off always. They said the most basic thing you could say about gun safety. And the safety is on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
They said the most basic rule of gun safety. And they showed specifically how do you load a gun. With close-ups and step-by-step directions.
Yeah, but there are other rules, like never point a gun unless you're aiming.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
They did gloss over all of the other points of gun safety, but they did include how do you load a gun.
Yeah.
A bunch of children who we are counting on to have mental illness and depression and be bullied at school. Hey, here's how you load a gun.
Honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with it if it were telling you how to unload a gun.
Yeah, if they were telling you how to unload a gun, or they were telling you more about safety precautions, or like, oh hey, be careful when you shoot a gun because it's gonna kick back and it's gonna hurt, or like, anything.
Or like, I mean, the one amusing thing was all the shooting of guns without any sort of hearing protection.
Yeah, like totally fine, whatever.
Yeah, I was listening to, I think it was Joe Rogan. He was talking about like shooting guns, and like all he could hear was like a ringing.
Are you talking about Bill Burr?
Oh, it might have been Bill Burr.
Bill Burr was talking about like why he has a quote unquote pussy 22 caliber gun, and he said specifically so. And then when he shoots a gun and he can't see because it's the middle of the night and it's dark, at least he'll still be able to hear because he could shoot a 22 caliber gun and still hear. Because with most other guns, you won't fucking hear anything after you shoot it. Good points, but like, yeah, this show does kind of like how it glorified Hannah Baker's suicide. It does kind of glorify the ability to use guns pretty freely. Oh, like, especially all the scenes where it's like, oh, we're just blowing off steam, or like, hey, why don't you shoot a gun and pretend that it's somebody that you really hate?
Which, it's crazy. Just when you think 13 Reasons Why couldn't be more controversial, it manages to push that bar. Now, it is a Netflix show, which means that they don't have to adhere to the same rules that other shows would have to adhere to, because I honestly don't see how a show like this could last even on cable.
That's true. I that's not really true. I mean, like, Law and Order...
Even The Walking Dead had to tone it down.
I know, but then you also have Law and Order and Law and Order SVU and like all these fucking shows that are on television all the time talking about shit, but like, they're never saying shit that's like downright fucking irresponsible for the sake of profiteering off of minors who they're counting on having emotional and or physical problems.
Yeah, and I would say that if you're listening to this and you have emotional problems, there are numbers that you can call. We'll put them in the description below. There's always an outlet, somebody to talk to for free. Now, granted, I wish that there was more, that there were more outlets for people to use. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case. Now, that's not to say that Hannah's actions or anybody's actions is justified. It's just to say that sometimes dealing with situations, especially when they're really hard situations, is a lot harder than just making a phone call.
Just because there are outlets available does not mean that it's easy to utilize them.
Right. I would say be especially careful around churches, just because they are not licensed professionals to deal with these types of situations. They help some people, and there are good things that churches can do, but they are not licensed professionals.
And the same goes for if you're dealing with substance abuse. AA groups are not necessarily the best thing to do. But all of that aside, I mean, I'm not a licensed professional. I don't know a lot about how to offer things for help, but I can recognize when a program that is specifically targeted at minors with emotional problems, substance abuse problems, physical problems, abuse problems, socioeconomic problems, and it's trying to profiteer off of them without providing real help. I mean, I'm sorry, if we're not providing real help, we're a couple of people on a podcast, and I know we hide behind that a lot, but we're not licensed professionals. We're not claiming to be. We're not saying that you should really listen to us in terms of, like, how do you handle things in your own life. Something like this, they are. They are profiteering off of it. They're trying to make money. They're trying to get views. They're trying to get people to go to their bullshit fucking website. And they're trying to tell kids not to ask for help.
That's the most frustrating thing about it, because it's like, oh, for more information, go to 13reasonswhy.info. Why? Why aren't you giving a suicide hotline as the first thing? Yeah, you can plug your website after you do that, but like that's the first thing that I think should pop up.
Well, you also need to have options to going to your parents or going to authorities or asking for help from fucking anybody be a serious option worth considering on your show.
They're always
you need to have that.
Yeah,
you cannot tell kids.
They're always going to be the type of kids that aren't going to do that kind of stuff. But like, you need to provide the outlet for the people that are seeking help.
Well, you need to not tell kids that are in that situation specifically, emphatically, and repeatedly in various situations. Do not ask for help. Asking for help is bad.
Yeah,
you cannot do that.
Also, like, kids cannot fix problems like that.
No.
You know, they can attempt to. Kids sometimes can, you know...
Maybe they'll get lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
But you cannot count on kids to do that themselves. You cannot teach kids, do not ask for help. It is hurtful and harmful and bad for you to ask for help when you need it. Like, a throwaway line in this whole season was Keiko Again's character. She says very specifically, like, kids don't always know what help is available to them, much less how to ask for the help that they need. That needs to be, like, the thesis for this program. Not a throwaway fucking line one time. I don't know the best way to ask for help. And I don't know the best way to tell kids who are going through these problems to ask for help. Well, but if this is the kind of program you're trying to write and put out there, that needs to be your number one priority and literally your job to teach kids through your program and outside of your program the best ways to ask for help and the best ways to handle these situations. You can't repeatedly tell them that asking for help is wrong and bad and will hurt them. You can't do that.
And also there are different methods of dealing with depression and all that kind of stuff. Because like, you know, I've dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts, you know. That's something that I've experienced, especially when I was in the military where I was getting verbally abused by an authority figure. It was very much like whiplash. On a day-to-day basis, there was no escape from it. It's very hard. And I'm not saying that I'm an expert and that the techniques that work for me are going to help somebody else. The techniques that work for me were basically, I exercised a lot, I tried to eat well, and I always tried to find a distraction. But I also sought out help. Unfortunately, the way that the military runs things, and I do not encourage this, is they always try to divert it to a chaplain. I don't agree with that. I think that, you know, unless you are specifically seeking religious help, that, like, medical help should be the first thing offered. I get that they're trying to use that as a deterrent not to create a whole issue and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I don't agree with that because there are a lot of people in the military with mental issues that do need help. And we did have a guy on my ship hang himself. And I remember when that happened and everybody wanted to figure out why. And me, along with several other people, were like, what do you mean why this ship doesn't do enough to help people? And so, like, for me, you know, in looking at this show, it is really frustrating how things are presented because I think they need to also show how people get through it. Mm-hmm. I do like the fact that Tony goes to a boxing gym because, like, that's one way of showing how to get rid of, you know, rage and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, like, that was one situation where, like, the authorities were kind of helping. Like, he's been arrested twice. He's on probation, but part of his probation is helping himself with anger management program that in his case includes boxing. But that's never an explicit thing that's really talked about.
Yeah, and
it's just kind of like in the background.
You know, and what I would say is, like, everybody, regardless of, like, what type of person you are, you need an outlet, you know, to address your anger, frustrations, and all that kind of stuff. And, like, obviously it shouldn't be, like, substances, you know, like, don't, you know...
Or gun violence.
Exactly, like...
But, I mean, like, before anyone's like, oh, well, see, look, this show facilitated a conversation with you, and look at how, like, you're, you know, talking about it, and that makes the show all okay. We're both adults.
Yeah, but I do think that's one way to do it. You're discussing your, you know.
Yes, but there is a lot of there's a lot of hiding behind the excuse of facilitating a conversation with this show that I do not find acceptable. You and I are both adults. We are both adults, and we have both attempted to seek help for issues that are addressed in the show that we have had in our own lives. We have already done that stuff. It's different for you and I to watch the show and have a conversation about it and put it on a podcast and put it on the internet. There are some people who are lucky enough to be open enough with their parents to watch the show with their parents and have a conversation with their parents, or to watch the show with their friends and have an open conversation about it. Those people are lucky. There are a lot of people who are in that position and who are at that age where they do not know the help that is offered to them. They do not have anyone to open up to, or feel that they do not have anyone to open up to, and they watch this show and it hurts them more. And it does more damage to them than help, because it is not showing them that there are ways to seek help that are worthwhile, that aren't going to hurt them, that aren't going to counteract on them and make them feel bad, or that are going to drive them to suicide. Because those are things that kids are afraid of. Kids that age are afraid that if they ask for help, or they talk to their parents, or they talk to their friends, or they go to a guidance counselor, or they call the police, that it's going to have negative ramifications. And all the show that has done over and over and over again is tell them that those things are not an option, and that if they are pursued as an option, it is going to have negative, horrible, life-altering ramifications for them. You are hurting those people, and that is not acceptable.
Well, yeah, and the fact that you didn't address Sky as much, when talking about, suicide, you are presenting, oh, well, if you show this, then you'll get put into a facility and all that kind of stuff, which scares a lot of kids into not talking about.
Mm-hmm. They do show that with Sky it was ultimately positive, but that was more about Clay being hurt by Sky getting help than about Sky doing this thing and it worked out well for her. That was not part of Sky's personal journey. That was not like a Chris Gethard style, talk about how you need to ask for help and you might be put into a facility and you might be put on medication, but ultimately that's going to help you because you need medication. Chris Gethard's, oh God, what is the name of that special? It's a really good special. I highly recommend it. I can't remember what it is. It's his special that was on HBO. I think it's still on HBO last time I checked, and I can't remember what the fuck it's called. But I think that it's okay to just say Chris Gethard, because he talks about this stuff a lot even before this special. And Chris Gethard also is not a licensed specialist. And he says this too, don't take his stories as a mantra for what you should do for yourself. But he does openly say that asking for help. Right, everybody is different, but he does say, don't be ashamed to ask for help. Don't be ashamed to have to take meds or see a doctor or get professional help. That doesn't make things bad for you. At least he does say that. And if nothing else. But career suicide. That's the name of the HBO special. Sorry. But the show always says that is not an option or that is a harmful option. And that is fucked up. I can't imagine that if I was 14 or 15 or 16 or 17 or 18... maybe between 14 to 17. I can't imagine if I was at that age and I was watching this program, how detrimental that could have been to me. I can't even imagine how much damage that would have done to me for where I was at that point in my life.
Yeah, and what is the show rated? TV-14?
This new season's been rated R, which doesn't mean anything. No, it's been rated R.
What do you mean rated? No,
I'll look it up. I'll look it up right now, but it's Netflix. It's a program made specifically for Netflix. They know that, and this is their core demographic. A rating doesn't mean that much. With that kind of thing, the rating is not an excuse to hide behind.
I just was curious. I thought it was TV-14, but I guess I could be wrong.
TVMA?
Yeah, okay. Which is your standard equivalent to R-rated shows.
That's bullshit.
Nobody pays attention.
Hide.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't hide behind that when it's something that's super accessible. How fucking easy is it for kids who are under 17 to watch a rated R movie in a theater, and people know that?
And I'm not advocating for banning or anything like that. I am very strongly against censorship.
But if you're going to be on the platform of we're talking about this stuff seriously, specifically for the kids who need it, you need to be held accountable for when you're fucking irresponsible.
And I mean, we'll see. You know, unless the show gets canceled, which I don't think it will because it's doing so well. You know, because everybody's watching it, and Netflix doesn't give out their algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm really curious and fascinated to see where they're going to go from here. Obviously, I will watch it because it's on Netflix, and you know, but also because like I feel that it's important for us to discuss this and how this show is being insanely irresponsible because I don't think it's being said enough. Yeah, a lot of people are saying it's being irresponsible. But I don't think you can say that enough.
And there are a lot of people and institutions and studies and professionals who are trying to defend the show when it's being this fucking irresponsible. That's not okay.
And I don't know if we'll do a podcast on this, but there is a special that they did about both seasons.
Oh, I will say I haven't seen any of the behind the reasons. I haven't seen any of that stuff. I don't give a fuck. You shouldn't have to watch those to have a proper context to watch this program. This program needs to stand on its own for the way that it's written and what people see on their own. It needs to be held to that standard. If they say shit in those specials, I don't care. That is not being said in the program. That's not being said on Netflix when you tune into it. It's not being told with the story. It's not what people are responding to.
I'm trying to think of films and stuff that present this well. You know, films and TV shows that present like suicidal behavior in like an accurate way that isn't problematic.
Well, a big problem is like this show is very specifically written from the perspective of how do I reach these kids?
Yeah, I mean, like, okay.
That's a big part of why it's irresponsible.
Here's a good comparison, and I know this is kind of weird to say, but Sofia Coppola's first film is The Virgin Suicides. Open spoiler to Virgin Suicides, even though the title itself is a spoiler. You know, this family of girls kill themselves, and throughout the movie, they are shown experiences, and then there seems to be like no other option for these girls. But the film itself presents it in a way that you know that there are other options for these girls. You also know that like people care about them and all this kind of stuff, and that the circumstances that they're experiencing aren't the only option for these events. And it's not trying to glorify their suicides as like, oh, this is like the right thing to do. In fact, you know, it is presenting it as like, wow, this is horrible, what's happening. And then at the end of the movie, making a complete mockery out of their suicides. You know, with that whole like party that they have afterwards. So, you know, kind of addressing the fact that like even when you kill yourself, nobody cares.
Right.
Society, people close to you, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just really frustrating because like the whole storyline of the second season is very specifically the parents trying to go after the school and hold somebody accountable because like, oh, well, Hannah Baker's death was a preventable tragedy, and if only she had the resources or like somebody had cared enough to know what was going on with her, even though like the school counselor did his job, and you know the teacher specifically said, if you have these issues, I'm available to talk, and if you don't want to talk to me, let me show you all of these resources that you have available to you. But that's not even the kind of courtesy that the show presents to its own viewers. And it still shows that even through all of that, where they're trying to blame the school and the school culture and still trying to say that Hannah Baker's suicide was preventable, when that happens to another kid, it's still the same fucking thing of we can't go to anybody, we can't seek help, we can't ask for help. And it repeats over and over again, and that's a really dangerous message to send to its viewers.
Let me re-emphasize, if you are somebody who is experiencing this, seek help in every way that you can. Talk to somebody. Particularly adults, talk to your parents. I get that some people are in circumstances where that's not an option. Or
that they feel that it's not an option and your feelings should not be invalidated.
Right.
But we're not licensed professionals.
Exactly.
We're not trained on how to counsel people, and it's hard to do that responsibly. But that's also not our job, and that's not what we're trying to do.
Like, I would say for me, and not necessarily telling you what works for you, but I would say, like I said before, keep active, run, drink lots of water and fluids. That's something that you can, just basic stuff that you can do. I get that, like, some people don't have the resources for food and all that stuff, especially if you're in a socioeconomic position.
Or necessarily access to clean water. I mean, even you and I are doing pretty well, and we don't always have access to clean, healthy water.
Right. What I'm saying is, like, stay active, find a hobby, and find something to occupy your mind outside of that. You can actually step away from what's going on in your life. Like for me, it's film. Like I like thinking about movies. Obviously, sometimes that coincides with, my own personal experiences and stuff, but like, some people have music, other people have art, I have art a little bit as well, but, find something to actually take your mind completely off of whatever's going on. I think that's really helpful.
And if those things aren't helpful for you, that's okay. None of those things are helpful to me. Just putting that out there. Like, there are people where that's not going to help you, but, like, there's no way I would ever tell somebody who has problems, do not seek help. Do not ask someone for help. If you are in a situation of violence from other people, or abuse from other people, or you have emotional problems, or mental problems, or even that life is hard for you right now.
The only thing that I would say, and I would say with absolute confidence, is do not isolate yourself.
Yeah. I agree. That is not something I would ever recommend, but I'm not in a position to tell people how to take care of themselves, unfortunately. But I can see that something like this that's profiteering off of this is being irresponsible by telling kids, do not seek help when you need it.
Yeah, and there are hotlines that you can call where you can talk to somebody who will listen to you. That's what they're paid to do, and it doesn't cost you money. And I will put that in the description below. There's suicide hotlines there, other hotlines. If you're a victim of sexual assault, there are hotlines for that as well. There are methods. It's really hard, but there are methods where you can, get rape kits and all that kind of stuff. There are shelters and stuff, but that gets a lot harder.
All of those things are much harder.
It's really hard. It's one of those things that, I will list some things, but there's always more. And I would recommend seeking help if anything happens to you.
Or if you are going
physical,
anything.
Mental, yeah.
And it's not always going to help. It is not always the case that you will reach out for help and everything will be immediately fixed for you.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it takes work on your part, the willingness to want to be helped.
And there will always be times where you reach out for help and it's not given to you. And that's horrible, and I'm sorry that if that ever happens. But that's always a possibility. But that doesn't mean that not seeking help is the right answer.
And being in school and being around, especially nowadays where cultures seem to be more and more isolated, I understand the feeling of loneliness, if that's something that you experience. But I just want to emphasize more and more, do not isolate yourself.
There's also a problem that we've been watching this program, or we've been paying attention to this program, and even you and I are like, we don't really know how good avenues of asking for help or getting treatment or doing what you need to do for yourself.
Yeah,
That is something that this program was specifically written of, and the defense is, well, we're helping people. No, you're not. No, you are not. You are not helping people, and you are not teaching people how to seek the help that they need.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is like what's worked for me. Though obviously, Casey has like other ways that have worked for her. So, and I've met other people that have different ways. So like everybody's different. Everybody has different ways to
and different experiences and different things that they have tried that have and have not worked. But it is a problem that you and I have watched this program. We feel like it's our duty to say something about it, and we're still kind of coming up empty.
Sometimes I think it's helpful to find somebody who looks like you to certain extents, like whether they racially identify as the same race as you. I know that's not always an option, but if they're the same gender and all that kind of stuff,
or orientation, or anything like that.
Yeah, sometimes that's helpful. And if somebody, somebody isn't working out for you, like, I know some people don't know this when they're seeking counseling and all that kind of stuff, that, like, if a counselor doesn't work for you, it's not necessarily the counselor's fault, but you can actually ask for somebody else.
It's also not necessarily your fault, but there are times where people ask for help and they are taken advantage of. Or they ask for help and it just doesn't work out and it's not helpful. Those things happen. Both of those have happened to me numerous times. Multiple times. And that's really hard to contend with. But it's worse when you watch a program like this where that idea is reinforced, that when you ask for help, it will not work out for you and it will hurt you more. Like, it's one thing to address that that's a possibility, but that there are other avenues or other options, or it's just really fucked up to see that kind of really harmful, dangerous viewpoint reinforced.
When I was in the Navy, like, there were times where, you know, I didn't have access to, you know, mental health and all that kind of stuff. And I had to deal with things either by myself or, like, discussing with other people. It was hard. And what worked for me was I dealt with one day at a time. That's not necessarily going to work for you, but, like, I'm sorry.
These things are difficult to talk about, especially when it's not like somebody's position to talk about it.
Is extremely difficult to talk about. I mean, I don't even care if this is advertiser friendly or not, because it doesn't matter, you know. Because, like, honestly, I would like to help somebody if I could, you know, at least to recognize that they're valuable and that their experiences shouldn't be trivialized. Mm-hmm. Which I think the problem with the show is, you know, sometimes with how it presents things, it does trivialize things. Like, that was the issue that I had with Bryce in season 1. Like, I felt that, you know, if you only show rape in one way, then you trivialize every other type of rape.
The show is Clay Jensen, which is a problem. Where, like, Clay is like, I want to help, but nothing I do seems to help. It's good to address that sometimes people feel that way. But ultimately, it's a show like that. It's their responsibility to show what you need to do. And not hide behind, like, well, but we started a conversation and that's what's important. No. You are not a child. You are not a minor. You are not a single person dealing with these problems. You are a program that had numerous resources that you ignored. You had experts tell you that certain things had to be handled certain ways and you ignored them. You are a board of adults, a whole group of adults, who decided that the best way to handle things was to not provide the correct kind of help and to tell people who were going through the issues addressed in your show that they should not be watching the show. If that was your idea of fixing things, fuck you. And if I'm going to be, like, really emotionally honest, you can all go to fucking hell. God damn it, that is not acceptable. This is not like an off-the-cuff remark. This is not like from the position of somebody who is in a vulnerable state. You all did this as adults with expertise at your fingertips and options, and you wrote a script and you went through pre-production and you did, like, all sorts of research on it beforehand and everybody approved of it, and then you filmed all of it and edited all of it and put it all together and watched it all and thought that that was all going to be, like, positive for you to publish and put out for a bunch of kids in vulnerable positions to comprehend. And you were fucking irresponsible. And the fact that there were copycats is unacceptable. And the fact that you still didn't fix shit with the second season is irreprehensible. And the fact that you doubled down on shit like only promoting your own goddamn fucking website, and you doubled down on things like telling kids that they need to not ask for help is unforgivable.
If anybody thinks differently about this season, feel free to comment below, or if you want to have a discussion, we're open to having a discussion now. As you can see on this page, I haven't had a lot of time to do things because I've been extremely busy moving, but if you want to set up a time, then I can discuss this show if you feel that the show worked in ways that I personally feel that we didn't, and maybe we can come to a different understanding.
Also, I mean, like, if you watch the show and it did help you, that's good. I'm not saying if you watch the show and you like it, you're a bad person, or if you watch the show and it did help you somehow, that's wrong. That's awesome.
Yeah,
there was an outlet, but that doesn't mean that they're doing enough.
I hate the movie Crash, but the one positive thing I can say about the movie is it did bring up a racial discussion with people, which I thought was a positive thing to come out. And I do get that the one positive thing I can say about the show is for certain people, not the depressed people that like the show is about, but like the people that do like bullying and all that kind of stuff. Like that's been a discussion that I think has helped to a certain extent. Now, I don't think the show has enough tact to do it in a way that I think is as helpful as it could be.
But also, I feel like just because they were able to do some things well, that doesn't negate when they fail. And a lot of the show has been about the failings of people in positions of authority, but that doesn't give them any excuse or defense to hide behind.
So yeah, let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back.